Hello everyone, Manny at the Game & Manny channel here, and let's continue reviewing the waves of the Mario Kart 8 Deluxe Booster Course Pass DLC. Last time, I reviewed the first wave of the DLC. Feel free to check it out if you haven't seen it already. My thoughts on that wave is that it's the weakest wave of the entire DLC. So in this video, I'll be reviewing the second wave of the Booster Course Pass. Is it better than Wave 1? Let's find out. Wave 2 of the Booster Course Pass was first released on August 4th, 2022. It gave us two new cups, the Turnip Cup and the Propeller Cup. The Turnip Cup features Fourside from Super Smash Bros. Melee, Mario Circuit 3 from Super Mario Kart, Kalimari Desert from Mario Kart 64, and Waluigi Pinball from Mario Kart DS. While the Propeller Cup features Sydney Sprint from Mario Kart Tour, Snow Land from Mario Kart Super Circuit, Mushroom Gorge from Mario Kart Wii, and the newly introduced Sky Eye Sundae. So, let's not wasting time and let's get on to the tracks themselves. The first track of the Turnip Cup is Fourside, a track that is based on the Earthbound stage from Super Smash Bros. Melee. Fourside is a... wait, New York Minute? Oops, I must have read that wrong. My bad. Let me start over, but I'm keeping the music. The first track of the Turnip Cup is New York Minute. No, not that New York Minute. This New York Minute from Mario Kart Tour. New York Minute is the very first city track as well as the Nitro to be introduced in Mario Kart Tour, starting with the very first tour, the New York Tour. Throughout the lifespan of Mario Kart Tour, New York Minute has been given 5 different variants. The previously mentioned New York Minute 1 in the New York Tour, the second variant in the 2019 Holiday Tour, the third variant in the first Anniversary Tour, the fourth variant in the second Anniversary Tour, and the Battle Mode variant in the Autumn 2022 Tour, which is slightly better than Paris B, but Battle Mode still sucks in Mario Kart Tour. The first lap is based on New York Minute 1, where the race begins at the center of Times Square. You slightly go right towards the central part. There are Goombas that were added to avoid. You go around the Central Park and head underneath the bridge to the Rockefeller Center. Fun fact, this is where the Nintendo New York store is located. Pretty big missed opportunity to feature it. There are 2 different paths you can take. One of the routes takes you a straight road to the 5th Avenue, passing through the St. Patrick's Cathedral, as well as seeing New York's most recognizable landmarks, the Empire State Building. You turn right twice, and then you reach the second lap. Lap 2 is based on New York Minute 2, which instead of going right, you go left this time. And just like with the first lap, you head towards the Central Park. After exiting the Central Park, much like the first lap, you just take one of the paths and turn right, and you reach the final lap. The final lap is based on New York Minute 3, where you turn left like in the second lap, but instead of going to the Central Park, you head underneath the bridge and turn right to the Rockefeller Center. You then head to the parking tunnel, where the Statue of Liberty can be seen in the background. You finally exit the tunnel and reach the finish line, finishing the race. My take on this track as a whole, it's pretty bland, simple, and not that very challenging in my opinion. Which makes sense given the fact that this is the very first city track in Mario Kart Tour to be introduced. And for being the very first track in that game, I'm surprised that this didn't came to Wave 1. I'm gonna be honest, I don't have much else to say. Like I said, it's just pretty bland and simple. But it's an alright start for Wave 2, I guess. The second track in the Turnip Cup is Mario Circuit 3 from Super Mario Kart. Mario Circuit 3 is the 5th and final track in the Flower Cup in its original game. Mario Circuit 3, alongside the rest of the SNES tracks, also appears in Mario Kart Super Circuit. For Mario Circuit 3 case, it appears as the second track in the Extra Lightning Cup. Mario Circuit 3 also appears in Mario Kart Wii as the first track in the Lightning Cup. And finally, the track makes an appearance in Mario Kart Tour during the 2019 Paris Tour. The race begins straight and is greeted with the right and left turns. You then make a huge U-turn that leads you to a straightaway, with an upcoming sharp U-turn with another straightaway. You then make another huge U-turn and go right and left. There is also a shortcut in the off-road. You then make a final right turn with one and only dash panel in the track, and you'll finish the lap. Yeah, just like with Toad Circuit, I don't have anything much to say about this track. It's just flat and... I mean, this is an SNES track. And since this was ported from Mario Kart Tour, every SNES tracks, with the exception of Bowser's Castle 3, are just plain flat and not that really interesting. Not gonna lie, the Turn-Up Cup isn't going strong for me. I hope the next one is good. Oh, hell yeah! I'm dying to talk about this one. The third track in the Turn-Up Cup is my most favorite track in the entire Mario Kart history, Kalimari Desert from Mario Kart 64. Kalimari Desert is the fourth and final track in the Mushroom Cup in Mario Kart 64. The track will later return in Mario Kart 7 as the first track in the Leaf Cup. Kalimari Desert also appears in Mario Kart Tour during the Tokyo Tour. Additionally, Kalimari Desert was also given a second variant in Mario Kart Tour, being Kalimari Desert 2, first introduced in the Wild West Tour, making it the only non-tour track to be given a different variant in Mario Kart Tour. The first track is based on the familiar route from the original Kalimari Desert. The race begins with a large left U-turn with a simple ramp on the side. There is also a shortcut from Mario Kart 7 which is located on the Mesa with a glide panel which will let you glide over the train tracks. Speaking of which, you stumble upon the train track. While drivers can cross the train track, but at any point, the train will appear passing the drivers. Upon making contact with the locomotive, it will damage the racers. In past installment, the drivers stop and wait for the train to pass by, which is a unique mechanic to see that not any other track has done. As for the Mario Kart 8 Deluxe version, however, the CPUs doesn't stop, but instead just runs towards the train like idiots, which I kinda find it pretty funny. But anyways, back to the track. You then make a slight right turn and cross the second train track. You then make a long left turn with some few ramps on the left side. You can also take the shortcut after the second railroad crossing with a mushroom or a star if you have one. Then turn right and you'll reach the finish line for the next lap. There's also a ramp in the off-road for a final shortcut. Now things will get interesting with laps 2 and 3 as it's based on the second variant of Kalimari Desert. The second lap is based on the first half, while the final lap is based on the second half. In the middle of the track, a ramp similar to the ones you see in any trick variants in Mario Kart Tour will appear, forcing you to drive through the railroad, just like what you can do in Mario Kart Tour. The final lap will trigger once you enter the tunnel, which could likely be a possible callback to the star shortcut, which every Mario Kart 64 speedrunners knows. Anyways, once you exit out the tunnel, you could choose to continue on the railroad or continue with the main route, and you'll reach the finish line. But watch out for the train though. Hey Scriffilish Productions, if you're watching this, you're not the only one who is a fan of this track. And yes, I saw the video. I have a huge love for Kalimari Desert. It's been my favorite track ever since I got Mario Kart 64 back on Christmas 2011. This track is also the reason why I also could end up getting Mario Kart 7, because it did return that game. And my thoughts on that one, it's fine, I guess. I am pretty disappointed that you can't go to the tunnel. I can also say the same thing with its tour version. But in 2020, I didn't expect this track get a second variant. That is such a nice track that Nintendo didn't even have to do for a track. And finally in 2022. After the first wave was launched, there was a prefix indicating that there's only one N64 track left for the entire Boosted Course Pass, and I hope that this track comes to this game. But then when the Wave 2 trailer dropped, I jumped in excitement when I saw Kalimari Desert is confirmed, and I love what Nintendo has done with this track by combining the original and Kalimari Desert 2 route. Since then, I always pick this track a lot. And I also love the music. It sounded so good, especially the second half of the song. So yeah, that's all I had to say. So, in my opinion, this is the best track they've added into this wave, as well as the DLC as a whole. I don't care what everyone says. Let me have this one, damn it. Nintendo added this track just for me. And Scriffilish Productions. Shoutouts to Mario Kart Tour though. Alright, let's move on. The fourth and final track in the Turnip Cup is the most popular track of the entire series, Waluigi Pinball from Mario Kart DS. Waluigi Pinball is the third track in the Flower Cup in Mario Kart DS. The track will later return in Mario Kart 7 as the last track in the Banana Cup, which I find it odd because Waluigi isn't even playable in that game. The track also appears in Mario Kart Tour during the 2019 Halloween Tour. The race begins by being launched into a pinball machine. Don't let your kids stare at it. You then turn left for a U-turn, which you'll go down the machine with some few turns. While going down, there are giant pinballs to watch out for. You then jump off the boost ramp and then make a right 180 turn, and you make 2 left turns. You soon later enter the pinball table, where there are bumpers, especially the moving bumpers. Pinballs going everywhere, as well as there are flippers at the end. You then enter the tunnel and make the final left turn to reach the finish line. Waluigi Pinball is one of the most popular tracks. It is loved by many players in the Mario Kart community, and is considered to be, quote, the best track in the entire series. Everyone loves this track. As for me, okay, I'm gonna be real with you all. I'm just gonna say it, I did not care for Waluigi Pinball. Not even on DS, Mario Kart 7, Mario Kart Tour, and Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. I just never liked the track. Don't get me wrong, I also grew up with Mario Kart DS, but I just have no nostalgia for Waluigi Pinball. I mostly play other DS tracks like Luigi's Mansion, Delfino Square, Airship Fortress. Speaking of which, I honestly would rather have one of these tracks over this track. Now listen, I have nothing against fan favorite tracks. In fact, I like fan favorite tracks too, like Maple Treeway and Mario Kart Wii. Same with Coconut Mall, but not the Mario Kart 8 Deluxe version however. I can also say the same thing with Sunset Wilds, 3DS Rainbow Road, Toad's Factory. Like, there are some other fan favorite tracks I enjoy. Some of them are not my favorite, but you get the idea. It's just that I'm just not a fan of this track. If you like this track, that's cool. If you don't like this track, that's also cool too. Now before you start hating me in the comments, let me just remind you that this is just my opinion. So that is all of the Turnip Cup tracks. Let me just say, it's a better start for the wave than the Golden Dash Cup. The first half isn't that great, but then there's Kalimari Desert, and Just for Everyone, Waluigi Pinball, are the saving grace for this cup, despite my negative take on Waluigi Pinball though. So let's move on to the Propeller Cup. The first track in the Propeller Cup is Sydney Sprint from Mario Kart Tour, a city track that takes you through Sydney, Australia. Sydney Sprint debuted in Mario Kart Tour during the first Sydney Tour with Sydney Sprint 1. The second variant was later introduced during the second Sydney Tour, in the same year as the first one. The third variant was introduced during the third anniversary tour, a month after the launch of Wave 2, making Sydney Sprint as one of the 2 city tracks in the Boosted Course Pass to feature an unreleased route at the time of their Wave's launch, with the other being Athens Dash in Wave 5. The first lap is based on Sydney Sprint 1, where you start at the Port Jackson and turn left and head towards the Sydney Opera House. There's a glide ramp that will glide you across the water and go underneath the Bradfield Highway. You then make a 270-degree turn passing the Luna Park, and you enter the Sydney Harbour Bridge, where there are ramps that are facing the opposite directions, as well as the spectators riding the Tangara on the north shoreline, throwing coins instead of bananas, mushrooms, and bob-ombs in the tour version. That's pretty lame. You then turn left going through a downtown and reach the finish line for the next lap. The second lap is based on Sydney Sprint 3 and 2, with the first half based on the third variant, while the second half is based on the second variant. This time, turn left to the first Fleet Class ferry. After jumping off the ferry to Dulwich Point, you turn right and left and head to the Barangaroo Reserve, with narrow paths split half downwards. There's also a shortcut off-road with the boulders. In the background, you can see the Urulu. That's how you pronounce it? After the reserve, you return to the Sydney Harbour Bridge. This time you can use the ramps to trick off. But instead of going to the Luna Park, you turn right to the Mary Booth Lookout Reserve, with curves, turns, and a glide ramp at the end. You glide across the water and land on the road between the Sydney Opera houses. And then you turn right and left to reach the finish line for the final lap. And there's not much to say about the final lap. It's basically the first lap, but reverse, which is based on the reverse variant of the city track, City Sprint 1R. And yes, ramps are usable. Unlike the previous 3 city tracks, I actually had a really wonderful time with this one. Although I have heard that some people prefer to have this track as a boomerang cup to better fit, which honestly that kinda makes sense though. Although the track itself just gives out the summer vibes. And since this wave came out during the summer, you could see why this track was included. But anyways, the track feels so alive. And it was from my point of view that the city tracks in the DLC can be somewhat good. The last 3 were just underwhelming, especially coming from a guy who plays a lot of Mario Kart Tour. And the track has an awesome banger soundtrack, which Nintendo really needs to chill out with the music, because they didn't need to go so hard with this one. Overall, I really enjoy this track. Will I play this again? Yes. Time to move on to the next track. Next is Snow Land from Mario Kart Super Circuit. Very creative name, Nintendo. Snow Land is the first track in the Star Cup in its original game. The track also returns in Mario Kart Tour during the 2022 Holiday Tour, 4 months after the launch of Wave 2. And just like with Shroom Ridge, this track is a new retro that debuted in the boosted course path before being added in Tour. The race begins on the bridge. You turn right and immediate left and right again, going downhill through a small forest with snowmen in the off-road. And the detour route from the original is completely gone. There's also a shortcut you can use, but it requires skills to pull off. You then head over to the sheet of ice with a water hole, as penguins will appear out of the water. You then make a U-turn, and then you make a jump off the ramp and turn right, followed by another turn, with a few more penguins roaming the track. That's adorable. There's also a shortcut in the off-road similar to the one that's seen in Mario Circuit 3. And there's also a brand new shortcut near the final right turn, returning the bridge to finish the lap. Out of all the GBA tracks to be included in the DLC, I honestly never expect Snow Land to be added. To me, Snow Land is pretty much the most forgettable tracks coming from Mario Kart Super Circuit, and that is before the confirmation of Snow Land in the DLC. But anyways, it's a random addition to the boosted course path, and it wasn't even in Tour at the time of Wave 2's release. And the gameplay experience, it's way better than the original, because for some reason the screen shakes throughout the entire race in the original, and the music feels very jolly, and I also love the newly added intro to the music. So yeah, that's Snowland. A very random pick, but hey, I can't complain. Next is Mushroom Gorge from Mario Kart Wii. Mushroom Gorge is the 3rd track in the Mushroom Cup, a pretty fitting cup if you ask me. The track will later return in the next game, Mario Kart 7, as the 3rd track in the Shell Cup. Mushroom Gorge also appears in Mario Kart Tour during the 2022 Mii Tour. The race begins at the straightaway with a slight turn on the right and left to the wooden bridge. There's also a mushroom trampoline shortcut which finally returns from the original Wii, as it was absent on 3DS and Tour. After the wooden bridge, you jump off a mushroom trampoline and turn left, and you'll see 2 different paths to choose. The left side features several dash panels, while the right side, as you went straight forward, there's a ramp, followed by 2 mushroom platforms, which originally had 3 in previous installments. Both sides lead you into the Crystal Cave with a left turn with even more mushroom trampoline / platforms incoming. Just like before, you can choose sides, left side with mushroom trampolines and the right side with 2 mushroom platforms, and there is also a glide mushroom in the middle which you can take to glide over the mushrooms. Once you exit out of the cave, you make a right U-turn and reach the finish line. There's also a grass shortcut at the end as well. But if you want to be a badass, you can also make a gap jump, which requires skills in 150cc, but it's easier in 200cc. Another fantastic Wii track to be added in the DLC. I'm glad that the old shortcut at the beginning made a comeback, as well as making the gap jump shortcut possible. A great track to race on. But I do find this track a bit janky with the mushroom trampolines, but sometimes I will land, but I will fall down to the pit. And I wish they could give this track a new remix, but to be fair, the music is still a banger, even if it did get a remix. And that's pretty much it I had to say about Mushroom Gorge. And now we finally move on to the final track, Sky High Sundae. The final track of the Propeller Cup, as well as Wave 2. Despite first appearing in the boosted course path, Sky High Sundae is heavily designed for Mario Kart Tour, alongside Yoshi's Island and Squeaky Clean Sprint. But the track will later be added to Tour during the Sundae Tour, few days after the launch of Wave 2. The race begins in the Peller, which is inside a giant freezer. You immediately use the glide ramp to fly into or go around a giant ice cream cone. You then land on a chocolate covered helipad. You go downstairs, you then start going back up, as well as turning left. It's also worth noting that there are railings acting like spin boosts, as the track itself is entirely anti-gravity. As you continue going upwards, you could choose one of the paths, you then land down with some platforms to trick off, then you head to a road made out of a giant ice cream cone, and make another left U-turn around the giant sundae. And finally, trick off 3 ice trays and return to the freezer to reach the finish line. I remember watching the Wave 2 trailer for the first time, as Sky High Sundae started off the trailer. Although a lot of people believe that this track alongside previous mentioned Yoshi's Island and Squeaky Clean Sprint were DLC exclusive, but like I said before, those are heavily designed for Mario Kart Tour, and these were data mines. But to be fair, not everyone sees the data mines. So it doesn't really matter if this track is a Booster Course original or a Tour original, it doesn't really matter. I'm just gonna say it's a new track for both of those games. But anyways, back when I first saw the trailer, I was so excited to see another brand new track coming to the series. And then when Wave 2 drops, I was pretty disappointed about the layout, as it's just an oval. We already have tracks like Baby Park and Excite Bike Arena. Why did they have to make another oval? This track has so much potential, but got wasted to become an oval. I guess Nintendo thinks 2 isn't good enough. I also mentioned that the track is entirely anti-gravity. One of the biggest criticisms of the first wave is the lack of any anti-gravity gimmick. Hell, even Skyguard didn't even have it in this turn. And I honestly don't think it's necessary to have a track like this one to be entirely anti-gravity. It makes this track feel floaty. Of course there's Mute City, Big Blue, and Wii Rainbow Road are entirely anti-gravity, and it fits really well on those tracks. This isn't a terrible track, I just wish they could have done better with this one, especially with the layout, even if it's designed for a mobile game. And that is the Propeller Cup, and I like this cup more than the Turnip Cup. Bangers like Sydney Sprint is such a good start, alongside Snow Land and Mushroom Gorge. But the cup unfortunately ended with a disappointment, but still a really good cup. And that concludes the second wave of the Mario Kart 8 Deluxe Booster Course Pass. And this is way better than the first wave. It has a way better track selection than Wave 1, even though Mario Circuit 3 is there. But still, a really good wave. So with that being said, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see ya on Wave 3, and don't forget to join my Discord server. I just opened up, so I'll be looking forward to see you there. Have a nice day, and take care. Peace.